Hello viewers, welcome to our lecture series on Indian ethos in management, and today we are going to extend our discussion on the topic of character competence of the corporation. This is going to be part 3 of our lectures on this idea of ethical philosophy, and we have been discussing about the character competence of corporation, what are the paradigms of ethics, and now we are going to discuss about the literature on ethics, that what academicians have to say about this very idea of ethics, wherein we will talk about three distinct approaches. We will also talk about social justice, where we have to discuss about equality of opportunities. So, going ahead with the literature, what it says about the ethics, if you are a decision maker, as I have been telling you from the previous two lectures also, that if you are making a decision and you can discuss your decision freely with your peer members, with your peer group without any pressure, then of course the decision is deemed to be an ethical one, because your peer members are going to stop you from doing something wrong, and or if it is not acceptable, they will actually stop you. And it may be indicated here that the world is beyond the dichotomy of black and white, and it is full of gray and gray of different shades. So, we have to understand that gone are the days when we used to talk about the struggle between the black and white. Now, it is full of gray and the different shades of gray. Within the gray, we have different shades where people are struggling, and why they are struggling, because somehow they are forgetting the roots of ethics, which is actually the real root. So, we have to understand that what is there into the ethics and what it suggests us. I told you about the praxis theory of ethics, which is most suitable, which is supposed to be most suitable to resolve ethical dilemmas which are falling in the gray zone. And most of the time managers, they are dealing with this specific zone wherein they have to understand that what exactly is the root of the problem. And here lies the usefulness of this specific theory, or which is called as praxis approach or praxis school, and it refers about setting the benchmark, setting the standards, or setting the norms in those areas where we can find solution to the problem. So, within the praxis school, there are different variants which I discussed with you in the previous lecture of mine, where they talk about the false consciousness and the need to belong. There are different academicians who have actually contributed to this very segment of the study, that is called praxis school. And what is the outcome, that also I told you, that here the meritocracy goes out. If you go by those situations, if you believe into the false consciousness, then of course you are going to compromise meritocracy, and mediocrity is going to become the order of the day. And that is what we should be worried about. We should try to actually stop such kind of situation, otherwise it will lead to curb on creativity and innovation. It is going to be a major hurdle whenever you will talk about being creative or being innovative, and without being innovative you cannot flourish in long run. So, there are three distinct approaches, as I told you previously, that we have to talk about deontological, we have to talk about teleological, and we have to talk about praxis approach. So, these three distinct approaches have been discussed at length, and now we have to talk about the virtue theorist who advocate about the virtue theory, which is rooted in Aristotle's idea of virtue. And when we talk about Aristotle, Aristotle feels that the values to be developed are best learned by studying the lives of those people who have reached to a certain level, or who have been successful into their attempt, into their endeavors. And if we are trying to develop a society wherein we have number of examples to show, then of course we can teach and preach ethics. Otherwise, by simply giving preachings, we cannot implement the ethics in its real sense. For instance, if we talk about India, we have a name called Mahatma Gandhi, who actually implemented ethics or ethical values by his life, by his own way of living. So, a person's life itself is an example of setting standards, setting benchmark, setting norms for the society to follow. and Gandhiji never used to preach anybody before implementing the same on himself or on his own way of functioning. So, that is the real picture, or that is the real way of implementing the ethics in an effective manner. So, people often talk about, confused about honesty, that what is honesty? We are confused about honesty. And if we find the stories of honest behavior in spite of several consequences as related to sagas and epics poetry, then of course we are going to consider it to be something which is achievable, because the present time belongs to smart goals, wherein we want our goals to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic and time bound. So, when we say SMART, it is considered to be an acronym representing SMART, that is specific, measurable, actionable, realistic and time bound. And when we talk about realistic, being realistic towards our goals, ethics is something which majority of the people think that it is a matter of theory only, practically we cannot implement it. But these theories, if we look at the Indian ethos in management, we can find that ethics can very well be practiced in its true spirit, in its letters and spirit. Whatever we are speaking, the same can be implemented also, and that is the beauty of virtue theory. And our epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata in India, they point to the deep influence of virtue theory on common masses. Even people at times they recite those values, that yes, we belong to a nation where such kind of human beings took birth, and they actually led their life in a way which is supposed to be the most ideal and ethical. So, in a way virtue theory is transtemporal, you can say, and it is independent of any ideology. We should not say that it is basically propagated by some ideology. No, of course not. It is independent of ideology, technology, production systems and different forms of business organizations, because we are witnessing rapid changes in the business format, and despite all those changes, we are still finding our ethical values to be as relevant as they were 100 years back. So, it is actually the beauty of Indian ethos, which now management has also started accepting and finding it useful for solving their day to day problems. So, the pioneering works have been quoted here, like I told you about the work done by Chakravarti, which was classified in the category of virtue theory rooted in Vedantic ethics. So, the work of another scholar is there which talks about the virtue theory, and it is by Matthias, and even the idea of spirituality at workplace in the land of dollar god. There is a very popular study that when we are running after money and when we are finding dollar to be our god, there too we can talk about spirituality at workplace. And this study by Srinivas in 1998, it can be considered belonging to the virtue theory approach to ethics and ethical leadership. So, leadership is supposed to be ethical in its letter and spirit. Whatever they are saying, whatever they are speaking, whatever they are writing, the same they are implementing also. So, we should be same in our words, in our actions and in our thinking, mansa vacha karmana, what we call. So, these three distinct approaches have been validated and discussed by different scholars in different ways. And if we find the work of Sadri in 2001, it suggests that literature on relevance of Indian ethics to management, if we have to classify it, it can be classified in three paradigms or streams. One is soul based thought, another is mind based, and the third one is ideal, real, dualistic thought. So, these three different classifications can be made to understand, to develop a better understanding of Indian ethos in management, Indian ethics in management. So, one is talking about soul based thought, another is talking about mind based thought, and third one talks about the ideal, real, dualistic thought, where we can compare the ideal with that of real situation, and we can find the discrepancies, the variances, and what are the reasons thereof. So, the different experts, they have contributed in their own way, but broadly their studies can be classified in these three broad segments. This is what I wanted to present before you in terms of literature review, that on this subject what existing body of knowledge provides us, what it has to offer us. So, there are different other scholars which I would not discuss here, who have contributed to virtue ethics, and they talk about what kind of person should we be, what should be the ideal way of dealing with the situation when I am working in a corporate setup. So, virtuosity is actually at the heart of the virtue theory, where suppose if we are finding some situation and we are actually understanding the virtuosity by its own merits, and we understand it in its true sense, but the difficulty comes in practicing the virtuosity, because people speak a lot, people know about the ethics, but when it comes to practice it, when it comes to walk their talk, it becomes very difficult for them to stand, even forget about walking. So, difficulty lies here, that how to practice the virtuosity, because it is very demanding, and on the part of individuals it is actually very demanding, it needs lot of sacrifices from a person. So, we have to understand, my dear learners, that when we are talking about virtuosity, it amounts to moralizing, and contradictions can be observed even in the lives of those who advocate extreme form of virtue theory, because it is really very difficult to and cumbersome also to implement that unless you are practicing it regularly. So, it may even amount to religious or secular fundamentalism. You may be blamed of that also. So, we have to be very vigilant about the ethical values, ethical principles or virtuosity in its true sense. If we have to find a practical formula, I told you in the previous discussion of mine about JRD, that is justice. J stands for justice, R stands for rights, and D stands for duties. So, whatever we are doing, we should do justice to our work. We should think of the rights of those who are actually at the end of a queue, who are actually the marginalized people, and what are my duties. These three we are supposed to keep in our mind. When we talk about the social justice, or when we talk about equality of opportunities, the primary focus of this theory is on social justice, with an emphasis on equality of opportunities. And in this theory, the expert or the academicians, they have identified two principles of justice, which deals with distribution of utility among the members of society and the equality of opportunities, that whatever resources we have, we should distribute among all the members of the society, and there has to be equality of opportunities. Everyone should have the equal opportunity, and if we are able to implement so, there is no clash, there is no struggle between any of the classes on any basis. So, there are different studies, my dear learners, in even in the Western thinkers domain. They have also talked about the Indian ethos in management, and they talk about the social equalities, because justice is also linked with the rights and duties, which should go hand in hand. But unfortunately, we talk about the rights, but we tend to forget about our duties, wherein the duty should always be given the top priority whenever it comes to the demand of rights. So, question comes, how to crack this the ethical dilemma. Ethical dilemmas are basically part of organizational reality. When we go for practicing ethics in your organization, you are bound to witness, you are bound to face such ethical dilemmas in your organization. So, the question comes, what are the methods which may help us in dealing with this kind of reality, to which we call as the ethical dilemmas. The literature, if we look into the existing literature on the subject, it suggests that there are three approaches which can help us in dealing with the situation of ethical dilemmas. One is dialectics, second is dialogue, and third one is commentary. So, DDC we call it, dialectics, dialogue and commentary. Now, let us talk about dialectics. What is there into dialectics method? This method is basically rooted in identification of contradictions, that we have to first identify the contradictions and we have to use the contradiction to clarify a situation of ethical dilemma. Whatever contradictions we are finding, we have to first identify them, and second step is we have to use those contradictions to offer a clarification of the situation of ethical dilemma. And remember, while doing so, we when we are implementing the dialectic method, its focus is on polarities and opposites, that what are the outliers, what are the polarities, what are the two extremes which we are witnessing, what are the two opposites which are into existence, and we have to first identify them and then we have to use those polarities and opposites to clarify the situation of ethical dilemmas. Why this situation arises, why are we finding these dilemmas? So, the reasons comes to the fore, comes to the front, and it can be viewed as a methodology of position, opposition, proposition. We call it, we have to go for first positioning ourselves, we have to find the opposition, and then we can develop our proposition. So, position, opposition and proposition. And in the traditional dialectic analysis, if you look, you find that the focus is on change through articulation of opposite position. We have to accept, we have to start accepting the diversities. We talk about managing the diversities, but how many of us are going to accept that diversity? So, the dialectics analysis basically focuses on making change, bringing change through articulation of two opposite situations, or more than two opposite positions can be there. And in the idea of position, opposition and proposition, dialectics is basically combined with the dialogue. It should not be a monologue. When I am speaking, I should listen to others also. I should listen to the opinions of the opposites also. And here, my dear learners, we have to note that deontologists, they tend to use dialectics to create a dialectical, or what you call as countervailing forces to change the society. So, deontologicals or deontologists, they have been using dialectic to create dialectical or dialectical forces to change or to bring change into the society. Earlier, what was happening, dialectics, it was viewed merely in the form of good and evil, that there are two opposites, one is good, another is evil. One is good, one is bad, one is darkness, another is light. But there is something in between also, and it was an ancient idea. There is a study by Hegel which gives it a sharper focus, and Marx applied it to social context. So, there is a lot of debate on that, which I am not going to put in front of you due to paucity of time, but in ethical dilemmas we need to ease the dialectical tension arising from the antagonism between opposing ideas. This I am not saying, this is something which researchers have concluded after conducting their own studies. So, in those situations, the concept of intensity of dialectics is a useful concept, because it focuses on the intensity of ethical dilemmas. And once we comprehend the intensity of dialectics, the answers to ethical dilemma could also flow easily. We can naturally find the answers, we can naturally find the solution to the situation of ethical dilemmas, if I am there to follow this dialectics model of doing analysis, or dialectics analysis if I conduct. Second one is dialogue. Dialogue is again the part of dialectics, but it is considered to be another approach to dealing with ethical dilemmas and resolving it through dialogue. In dialogue, there is an engagement with the issue, and there is a continuing discussion. We are continuously deliberating and discussing on a specific situation. So, in this way, it is a democratic process wherein everybody is having right to have his or her own say, wherein the dilemmas are looked from different perspectives and frameworks. So, from different aspects, from the different dimensions, we are discussing a particular situation, and the very entire process of dialogue, it actually results into the new solutions, because in dialogue approach what happens, we are finding different opinions even while talking to somebody. Suppose initially I had some predisposition into our mind, but after having a discussion with the counterparty, I may revise my decision, I may revise my understanding. Because in dialogue approach, the focus is on asking the right questions and raising the proper issues. So we have to ask the right question, that is also an art, and we have to raise the proper issues in a proper way. So dialogue of Socrates narrated by Plato, it could be supplemented with the Indian what you call as Yadvad approach, wherein each problem or issue is looked at from various angles, and this has been into our Indian tradition. And metaphorically, Syadvad is described by the well known Indian story of the blind man and the elephant, wherein if you look at one perspective, one part of a problem, you may not find a holistic solution. So, we have to look at a situation, look at a problem in a holistic manner. And the last one and third approach is commentary. Commentary is basically an Indian tradition, and it is written to elaborate the viewpoint and provide logical explanation to a specific situation, to a specific problem. If we look at the metaphorical expressions, it could also be used to highlight various perspectives, and by the way of applying commentaries, ideas are updated and they are brought to explain the current and future context. And through application of ideas to contemporary context, ideas get updated and a continuity is maintained. So, you find it to be a perennial kind of situation where you have different opinions and you have commentaries to conclude, to understand. So, in an eclectic approach to ethical dilemmas, all three approaches, if whether it is dialectics, dialogue or commentary, it can be used by the managers in confronting and resolving the ethical dilemmas. So, they can actually stop having oppositions to such situations. So, all three approaches, they can help us in finding solutions to the problems which we are facing in day to day corporate operations. So, with this I am concluding this very segment of my lectures on the topic. I hope you must have enjoyed this lecture of mine. Thank you so much.